Impressed. Joy, Mike, and Derek here all at the same time. It's like a trifecta.
Hello, it's been too long. I'm
It
sorry.
has. Where have you been?
I've been a long, where have I been? Actually, that's a great question. Oh, I know where I've been. So my daughter she's she got a part in Boston's company production of the Nutcracker. And
Whoa.
so she got this basically, she's eight, she got a part-time job effectively. And so we've been hauling her to, she's midday shows, rehearsal, etc. So we've been doing that. That's been, and then I think 2 weeks ago, and then last week I had a offsite for my team. So anyway, it tis the season.
This is the season.
Yes. How's everybody else's season going so far?
Relatively productive.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I love December. You can get a lot done. Things are
Yeah.
slowing down on other release cycles and other issues.
I was doing good until partway through the advent of code, and then I slowed down. My laptop is still solving yesterday's problem because I refused to do linear algebra.
I remember linear algebra. That was a fun
I,
class.
I vaguely remember it. I'm thinking, all the matrix multiplications and all those sorts of fun things it could have been doing. And I just want to let the computer churn on it for a while and it heats up the office. So I think we got most of the folks that are going to show up. Joy, is there anything on the TOB nominations? I know Sam and I have
Well,
kind of been back and forth on some of that with you. It's because this is the one for just OCI members. I think it usually goes to whoever the representative is for each member on the board.
so I did send an email to the trademark board with the form and and pointing them as well to the issue. Um, and then I think I'll probably go ahead and also just provide a notice to all members, even though that may not be relevant to all members. It's just like a transparency thing that we're going through that process. Show us your discrete math book next, Mike.
I'll be
Um,
right back.
so and I think the other thing I need to do because it's that time of year where this kind of notice is going to get missed is reach out directly to the folks who are in those roles like Phil and others and just make sure they know um, that it's time to renominate or maybe find if there's another person in their company that they think would be a great fit to do
Yep.
that. Yeah, and
Have
then
you
we
been
did
getting people filling the form out yet?
no, let me go see. Actually, I say that, but I haven't looked yet today. So let's go see. My guess is no. Recent responses, zero responses. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Not surprised.
no. And I actually did kind of try and extend our periods a little bit over last year. So can, we have a little bit of padding.
I
So,
think the padding will come during the voting window when we just skip it because we just finally got enough nominations so we could close
yes.
first come, first serve.
I strongly suspect that we will have renominations and really no competition. So, but still, just in case.
I mean, it would be awesome if we have a massive runoff election here and folks are all excited to join in.
Yeah. Yeah, actually that'd be, the other thing, I mean, we could look at this with the trademark board, itself, if we feel like um there's benefit in having a wider pool of potential um oversight board participants, even from outside member companies, but that's a topic maybe for another day. And I don't necessarily think that anything is broken. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, etc.
When we finally have our first meeting in who knows how many years, we'll
Yeah.
cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Mike, did you find your book?
No, no, I didn't actually. I mean, non-numerical algebra, but not not discrete. Not with where the
Oh,
title of the book is fair.
oh, that's
But
all right.
yeah, no, I was going to say it's definitely time to have a sit down, I think, with the Tub. I guess we could ask Sam to schedule one.
Yeah, I feel like the one question that I've got for the top is, should we make a policy for how to remove inactive maintainers that just gets blanket wide? Because right now it's the scenario where you have to have a majority, you have to have a quorum of maintainers to remove a maintainer. I believe, if we want to do a vote like that,
Yeah.
I have to go looking through all the governance documents to see if that's the case. But you can easily get into a situation where you don't have a quorum to recreate a quorum. And how do you undo that mess?
Mm. Well, we in some of our other projects we have language about like the requirement that the representative have, if even if they don't necessarily, because with say the project hasn't had a meeting in the last X period of time, you can't really say, oh, it's meeting attendance, but rather participation in a voting decision or participation or engagement in a mailing list, some other sign of life, so to speak, and that if they haven't shown that or demonstrated that in some period of time, that they no longer count towards quorum, because we consider them as being sort of um not estranged.
Inactive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
inactive. Yeah. And so that's something we can look at. Are there,
We're
are we,
more accurately active in other, non-standards based
yeah.
activities.
I'd also be very open to just reclassifying someone if they aren't shown for votes, to be able to reclassify them, just saying, an inactive maintainer that could become active again. Instead of you're out, we're cutting you off, you have to go running for the maintainership again. It's like, well, we already put you through the process. You're a good person, but we just don't want to count this when we're trying to make some progress here.
Yeah, we actually did that in the Container D project management, right? We allow anybody who is thrown off to become, to come back. And it makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
on their own cognition to be able to come back. I think was the tricky part. But everybody agreed that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm now pulling up what Tianon shared here.
Josh Dolsky's issue. Yeah.
Add and remove maintainers from sub-projects. Yeah, there's a handful of things that are sitting out there that we haven't tackled, so it wouldn't hurt to review some of these things.
Yep.
So,
You
on that
say
note,
review, and what I hear is relitigate.
I mean, we can use that language if you want
Tina,
to,
you're
I
always so
guess.
much fun.
So let's relitigate another thing.
Yeah, let's
Tina,
do it.
Tina, what's going on
Ooh,
here?
When the spec was created from the Docker spec, there is a concept that the Docker spec conflated that the OCI spec intentionally split, and that's non-distributable layers versus what I'm calling foreign layers, but they don't really have a name in the OCI specification. Descriptors have an optional URLs property, and there is a media type for non-distributable layers, and those two things are not necessarily connected. The spec even specifically says the URLs field should not be used to determine non-distributability, and that non-distributable layers don't have to have a URLs field.
So I haven't scrolled down, so I don't see it down there. I was going to check, see if you answered the question. What is your recommendation then for the conformance test? Because right now the conformance test does test that a registry will accept a non-distributable layer that has a URL specified against it. Are you suggesting that we test just a non-distributable layer without the URL? Or are you suggesting that we test the URL without
I'm
non-distributable
suggesting,
layer?
oh man, I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I'm suggesting we test all the combinations. I think that feels like it's in the spirit of the tests you've already written. When I wrote this, I actually thought that you would enjoy it because it felt like the suggestion was in the spirit of what you've already written, in that you're testing like every combination you can even think of, every edge case you can think of. So my intent was maybe we should test non-distributable layers both with and without URLs, and normal layers both with and without URLs.
I'm just only imagining what a registry is going to do when it starts to see some of that.
So it's more of a survey question than a,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And then I think
there's
once we know
also
the results of the survey, then we could readdress, right?
All four of these cases are valid per the specification. And so it is valid for the conformance tests to test all four of these cases. Now, to the point of Brandon making all of this configurable, I imagine knobs for each of these things because this is going to be one of those controversial places. But I think it is valid for the spec to test all four cases.
So it's actually 2 to the 8, not 2 to the, or 2 to the 3, not 2 to the 2 here, because there's also whether or not you push the blob. Because you can have a non-distributed layer, but you still push the blob, or
Yeah,
you
true.
don't push the blob.
And if you wanted to get really crazy, that's both layers and config, because I know of at least one registry that will reject one of those, but not the other. Because I've
Well,
personally tested it, much to Jeff's chagrin.
Jeff is over there like screaming, pulling his hair out and smashing keyboards, I'm sure right now. But
If URL, just reject. That's easy enough for me.
I figured you just do like a regex on Tionon's name. Anywhere you see that, just reject right there.
I mean, you're on the same list, so be careful what you're for.
Rightfully so. Especially after I killed so much of your time on Friday.
We made the test better as a result, so not completely wasted.
That we did. So yeah, if we want to do the everything test, that would be interesting. I'll leave it as an open to do, but at least know where you're trying to go with it. Speaking of things Jeff and I wasted a bunch of time with on Friday, the streaming blob push. This is one of those that we've got a conformance test for, but we don't have a spec language for. And so I wanted to run it past the team, see what folks thought about it. One thing to note is that our current conformance test will do the patch. It sends the body of the blob. It does not send a length of the blob. So it's just, you don't know, just accept what you get. And then we do the put request. The put request does set the length of the blob, but there's no body on the put request. I think Jeff and I can currently look at that and both agree that that is wrong. But I wanted to raise a little bit of visibility on that one just in case other people are saying, no, we actually depend on the content length on the put request because that's how we check something or other. No opinions. Do folks agree this is wrong, though, to set a content length on a request where you don't actually have content?
Why would you do that though? I'm just like you have a non-zero content length with no content being sent in that case.
That's the test, as it is today. Jeff and I both looked at it and we said, oh no, what the heck is wrong with this thing?
Okay, so that's just the test, but what is it exactly testing? Like is it expecting a specific response from the registry there?
It's expecting that the response comes back and says everything is A-OK created.
Oh, because this is after the patch. So this is the empty put, but it has
Yep.
the full blob length as the content length. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Post, then we do the patch. We don't set the content length on the patch, but we do send the blob in the patch. And in the put, we specify the content length, but there's no body on the put. There's a content type on the put, which is
Oh, is that because the
bodies.
content type is octet streamed? Wait, no, that doesn't mean you would ignore the length, right? Because that's different than the like chunked encoding.
This all feels so wrong.
Well, if it's not chunked encoding, then you need to have content length, right? Like even if it's zero.
Yeah, but then if the content length is not zero and there's no content, then a service could potentially be expecting that.
Yeah, so you have the option of either having content length with the data or content or chunked encoding with data, right? So this looks like so is the content length basically set to zero here, or is it set to like the length of the blob?
The length of the blob.
Okay, that's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it was set to 0, that would be one thing.
Yeah, this is an empty request. So ideally you should not have any content. So set to zero basically.
Okay. So I think Jeff and I are both happy with that.
Yeah, as long as I guess your concern there is that registries were using that to validate the hash length
And
or the length of the object that was just uploaded.
that was sent in the patch in their previous request, in particular because this is not part of the spec. It's part of our test, but it's not part of the spec yet. We should make it part of the spec.
Well, I mean, isn't that just HTTP at that point? Like, there's nothing
Eh,
that diverges from standard HTTP behavior. Like, if we were to say that the content length must be set and it must be set to the length of the blob, that'd be one thing. Wouldn't be a smart thing, but that would be a deviation from the or a specific way to use HTTP.
I mean, currently right now we specify here's how you do a patch, and we tell them you must set the range, you must set the length, upload each of your chunks, and then when you're all done, to close it, you do a put. You have the content type if chunk provided. So presumably this would not be set if you don't have a chunk, but I'm not too picky there. And then these others, if present, you specify the length and the range. This is on the chunked push. But
So I
when you
think
do
the
the streaming
confusion is
push, you
that
do not have the range or the length. Sorry, I think I cut Saeed off there.
there's two kinds of chunks. So one is what the OCI calls the chunk, which is essentially like a blob of data. but there's also an HTTP chunked encoding, which is different, where you don't specify a content length for like stream data. So I think that's where the confusion is here.
Yeah, I think part of the reason we have been so flexible about leaving that in the test is because that's the way Docker used to. I haven't checked to see if they still are, but Docker used to push all their blobs with a streaming request. I think they were generating on the fly as they were packaging up the layer.
Yeah, but I mean, to Said's point, the whatever HTTP mechanism you want to do for encoding, chunk encoding, and content links shouldn't really matter. Like even the range requests there, I assume when you provide a range request on the patch there, the length there is still intended to be for that specific request, not for the entire blob, not a range. Like the range would be a subset of the length or something because you're only patching a certain part of it.
We had to add this of the current chunk language recently because there was disagreement on that for a little bit.
Okay, yeah, there. That's so my expectation is that content length on the put, yeah, you only would put that there if you're uploading the last chunk.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think that's clear from what you're just showing in the spec. It's pretty clear that that's what's expected. I don't know if that conformance test was trying to, which might make sense, is to include the last chunk, like break it up so that you do a patch and then do a last chunk in the put to make sure that the registry actually accepts the last chunk on the put.
Now I'm curious, go down here and find out where we do our chunked upload. Here's the chunked upload. I think we also do a regeneration on this thing, but the first post, we actually set the content length. The patch, we specify the content length of the second chunk, and then we make sure that it comes back and says you're out of order. And then we come back and do the first chunk with the first chunk's range and the first chunk's length. Retry, and that'll fail. And then the second chunk and the second chunk's range. So,
And then that put is content length 0. Okay.
yeah,
So you
which,
could, if there was 3 chunks, you could include the third chunk there at the
yes.
on that one to test it, or you could just remove that second patch and just have that be the put with the length. If we wanted to test that, I mean, to Tianan's point, yeah, maybe we should do both, two different tests.
So I did want to test that, so I've put that in there.
Okay.
And so that's in the new redesign is as part of this goes in my API.
Of course you did.
I've got a switch in there that just says, as we're doing this, blob delete, blob. Where's my patch chunk? Patch chunk. I have a switch in there now that says, if I'm doing a put on the last chunk, then I'll go ahead and send that with a put request. Otherwise, it's doing a patch request. So I've got that little switch in there that I can test both scenarios.
Nice.
Just to make sure that whether or not there's data in that last put, that we test either or, which is a lot more than what we were doing before, but I think it would be nice to make sure we got all these edge cases as best we can in there. Still kind of going back searching for where you have some of these. It goes back a ways. I'm trying to remember when it was we last talked about it, but there is a request for us to actually specify the streaming blob push. Yeah, I'd have to go find it. We've got that issue somewhere out there where we need to specify that in the spec itself. And I feel like even if it is following along with HTTP, the fact that we did so much specification in the patch for how to do a chunked request in here, that it'll be nice to specify how to do the streaming in there. Thanks, Jory. Good having you here.
Always fun to be here. I've just felt bad. So, but Slack me, I guess, if you need anything, Brandon, and I will be talking to you guys next Thursday.
All right. Cheers. All right. So that was one of the things that Jeff and I were going back and forth about. We were finding out all kinds of fun about how content length is not passed as a header if you specify it as a header and go. You have to specify it on the request struct and not as a header. Hilariously painful for me to find out. I'm pretty sure I knew that from way back in the past, but I just had to rediscover that challenging little bug there. The other one Jeff and I were talking about last week was, do we want to work at some point on the spec of how to do this back and forth of a post, get a location, do all this stuff, but have the location go straight to something like an S3. I feel like there's been requests for that too, and I'd have to go dig them up, but what would it take to allow someone just to do their blob push straight to S3 without the registry having to be the middleman?
What would it take to do that in compliance with the spec?
I'm almost thinking, what would it take to change the spec to make that possible? And part of that is going to have to be that clients will need to deal with, if a registry tells them to do that. No, the registry is going to have to deal with clients that don't know how to do that. And so some kind of graceful fallback in there of registry giving clients good input so that they know, some kind of two-way handshake. Hey, I know about this new API. I can send it this way if you need me to.
How would validation work in that case? Like what the client is uploading matches the checksum, basically.
That's exactly the question I had going around in my head. Jeff, I see you jumping off mute there. What are your thoughts on validation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is strictly a like, hey, we're just going to relax it, and so that way the blob post no longer needs a location header. Like, I think there's would have to be a net new flow in terms of you initiate to the registry. I went to upload. The registry passes back a S3 like a pre-signed S3 URL. The client pushes that, and then again, there'd have to be some sort of final put to say, hey, I'm done pushing this. Now go validate. So that validation obviously still needs to happen. It would just have to be a separate step. Sort of the idea behind this is um, making it a lot cheaper to run registries on one hand. On the other one, it also unlocks a lot of performance improvements. There's been a lot of different pitches on, hey, how do we improve the speed of uploads? This is one where you actually allow that, because if you just say, hey, implement an upload URL to an object store, they can do that in chunks. They can do that in out of order. It doesn't really matter. It's more you use whatever method you want to get that data up there as fast as possible, and you just tell the registry when it's done. So it's just kind of like a two birds with one stone, both improving upload performance and making it a lot cheaper to run registries. But yeah.
The registry itself shouldn't need to validate unless it plans on sharing that data across namespaces. But
Well, we validate digest other places usually.
yeah, but would it be really breaking the spec if me as a client uploaded something into my own namespace with the wrong data, and then when I go to pull it, it's going to fail because the client isn't going to match the digest. But if I'm just saying, if I have that, if I own that space, I want to upload something to S3. The way it's checksummed and stuff, if it's invalid, it doesn't have to be the registry's responsibility to do that. I mean, it's more of like a security primitive to say, hey, if as a registry, if I'm going to share this content across multiple users of this content, then I better be sure that this is exactly what it is. But me as an uploader in my own namespace, I mean, you're basically just uploading something to a folder, and then if I go to pull it later and it's not the right digest, that's my own fault.
I I would disagree on that. Registry as a product or as a service is a content addressable storage. So the expectation is that whatever data you upload is going to be stored in a content addressable way. So in case of, like, for example, Docker distribution, it stores it as a Merkle tree in the object storage. And then when you try to retrieve it, it expects the right checksums to be in place.
Yeah, but you're talking about from a registry standpoint, not from a protocol standpoint. So when I'm uploading, the question here is whether or not I, as an uploader, if I upload something that's invalid, whether I need to get an error back from the registry that says, hey, this digest didn't match. Because that would be the S3 complication of, like, if I'm uploading directly to S3 and now I'm done, like, who's responsible to tell me that, hey, this digest doesn't match?
Yeah, that'll be the registry. That'll definitely be the registry. S3 doesn't have any knowledge of how you're uploading. It just collects data. So as Jeff was saying, there needs to be some sort of handshake at the end of the upload to S3 between the registry and the client saying, hey, the upload to S3 is done now, go and verify that. And then through some mechanism, like I believe S3 can do checksumming but on its own. So basically the registry will ask the S3 saying, hey, this is the upload location, what's the checksum? And essentially the checksum should match what the client pushes to registry at the final push and what it gets from S3. There's a lot of async stuff going on here, because once the client uploads to the S3, it will immediately contact the registry saying, hey, the upload is done and this is the checksum. But for the registry to validate that whatever the client pushed with the specific checksum with S3 is going to take time. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to be done right now, but it's a good idea. I like the idea. It unlocks a lot of slowness in OCI.
Does S3 give you, will it be able to give you like a SHA-256, some of
Yeah,
the
S3 has
content?
yeah, you can request checksum. It's an async call though. So S3 will take its own sweet time to respond you with the checksum.
Is it SHA-256 or an MD5?
It's SHA-256.
Okay. Thought I remember looking through the spec at some point there, the S3 spec, and seeing MD5's checksums coming back, and
I wouldn't be
that wouldn't
surprised,
help
but
us.
there's a few algorithms in S3 you can request. Like you can request SHA-256 is one of them, and I believe SHA-512 is coming or there already. But yeah, you definitely can get checksum. You ask S3 for checksum, it'll give you.
So taking the assumption you did that, the client would see some kind of upload URL from the server in the post request that says, hey, here's, do the post request, send it to this pre-signed S3 URL, or send it directly to me. There's probably two headers or something like that. When it's all done, it would have to go back to the registry and say, okay, all done, send it to S3, go check it. That post request is traditionally a really quick request response, unless you have data in there. But even then, once your data is uploaded, I feel like that's a pretty quick response to the clients. If we're turning this
Right.
into a long running async thing, that final put might not be so quick, especially if the client is telling the registry, hey, please download this blob on your side and make sure it's right.
Yeah. That's the problem. Like I think that's the bottleneck in this approach. And this is a very specific to S3 only, right? Like I don't know if like GCP or Azure have the same capability of like um verifying checksum. Well, in that case, then the registry has the onus of downloading the whole blob to verify it, which completely defeats like the last fight is going to take forever. The good thing with the flow through the registry is like you can do like on streaming checksum, which is nice.
For GCP, I'm pretty sure that we have checksum also. So how would the pull path or the download path work in this case?
Yeah, once you have the blob in the right location and all that, the download path is exactly the same. Like there's no changing, I believe, in the download path. So essentially, when you pull, instead of pull, the registry will just redirect you to the S3 location or whatever, like it's using a pre-signed URL. So it's what we have right now, or to a CDN or whatever. Like the pull path is the same.
So this feels to me that you have to be really careful about um, the data storage format, whatever you push and pull from S3, because all the ecosystem clients have to be happy with it. What I
What
mean
do you
by
mean by storage format? Sorry.
no, so what I mean is, let's say if you push something into the registry today, the registry can choose to store the blobs in whatever format it chooses, right? As long as it conforms to the API compatibility. But in
Right.
this case, if you push it to S3 directly and then the clients fundamentally pull it directly from S3, then I have to be careful about what that format is. Is it going to be a blob, an OCI blob itself?
So yeah, that's a good point. Like if a registry has a different storage format, like for example, it chunks blobs internally, but it's completely transparent to the client. Yeah, that's a problem. Uh, it should not support this kind of storage, in my opinion, in that case.
And the other question I have is uh, we are going to be compatible with a specific vendor. Okay, let's keep that aside. The other thing is the performance itself, right? So we are assuming that pushing to S3 is going to be faster than storing locally on the registry. Uh, is that is that true always?
I guess so. We've done tests in like for I cannot speak for others, but I've done tests personally comparing S3 uploads with uploads to through a registry going to S3, and always the S3 upload wins. Um, the biggest advantage is you can push in parallel, so you can have multiple connections. You can saturate your pipe, whereas with OCI you are restricted by the spec to only upload sequentially.
So that is comparing S3 backend hidden by the registry versus directly going to S3. But what if the use
Correct.
I store the data locally on the registry versus sending it to S3?
Oh, like a file system?
Yes.
That I don't know. That depends how fast you can receive data on the registry, I guess. Like, yeah, like there's a lot of unknowns there. Like, what's your file system on? Is it on hard drives? Is it on flash disks? How much of a uplink you have to receive data? There's a bunch of unknowns there. But I think the advantage is parallel versus non-parallel uploads. That's what I see here.
Parallel versus non-parallel pulls or pushes.
Pushes. Pulls are parallel.
Yeah.
Like you can do range requests on pulls. That's fine. It's only the
Yeah,
push which is sequential.
I thought you said pull, and I was thinking, gotta mean push there.
Sorry. Yeah, it's pushes.
So in terms of how this could potentially be implemented, would it be maybe a second header on the post that the post response that just says two locations? One location is the normal send me your stuff right up to the registry, and the other location is, hey, send your stuff directly to the S3 backend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have to definitely be an opt-in kind of a thing, and I think doing a post of sort of creating the session and then returning a location followed by a put to kind of finalize it and sending signal to the registry that it's done, sounds like the right flow. So yeah, I think it'd be probably some form of, the post flow. If the registry supports it, returning it. And then if the client supports it, it can use it. If the client doesn't support it, it can use the fallback, or I mean the existing flow. That sort of handles if it's there, that way if the registry supports it, the client knows to use it, and if the client doesn't support it, it can ignore it, kind of a thing. And yeah, I think the actual flow and implementation needs a little more noodling. This is just kind of a, hey, this sounds like something that could be really useful for a lot of people. I know it'd be useful for us. So
Is there a certain size threshold where it stops making sense to go through the whole process with S3 to get the pre-signed URL and all that stuff and just let the client talk directly to the registry and have it send stuff straight then? Thinking really small blobs, how much are we looking at handshakes and back and forth versus just going directly to the registry?
there might be, but I mean, very selfishly speaking here, there's other implications here that this impacts beyond sort of size and performance. So one of those being, hey, what if you don't upload to S3? What if you upload to R2? Um, Now I can pull it from R2 into my local system for $0 egress to validate, but the data already exists in R2 for distribution, again, for free. Versus if I upload to S3, then I have to push it to R2 for distribution. Now I'm paying egress on bytes. So some of this is sort of cost performance or cost improvements as well in terms of efficiency of serving things from a registry perspective. But there is also a upload performance aspect. So I think there's multiple angles here that are at least worth noodling on a little bit more.
I'm not quite following the R2 versus S3 difference in that case. Couldn't the registry send straight to R2 instead of sending it to S3?
No, not not really, depending on how you run your architecture. So the R2 comes into play because R2 famously charges you $0 for egress. Um, if you upload to your service that is not running as a Cloudflare worker, you're paying sort of the egress on pushing it up to your service in locally or cloud vendor or whatever, egressing it out to Cloudflare R2. So you could, yes, upload into R2 as your backing store instead, but now you're paying egress on those bytes out of your service to Cloudflare.
Got it.
This is a very registry specific thing.
Yeah, so it's,
I'm just trying to expose all of my biases up front.
yeah.
My concern with this method is the last commit. I think we already talked about that like I don't know if is do we want to implement like an async workflow on the client side? Is it too much for doing that? I don't know.
Or could you use the follow-up manifest upload or something to do that? Like to collect those together, because normally it's like you're going to upload a bunch of blobs, and then when you're done, you're going to upload a manifest, and that manifest might check to make sure those blobs are available at the specific hashes. So like that already kind of is a separate thing, but my concern is like there's just a physics issue around
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
around
that's
computing hashing that like
right.
it's if you're streaming everything up to S3 and then afterwards asking it to go compute the hash, like there's just physical limitations in terms of how long that's going to be, and like
Yes, that's true.
yeah.
I mean, yes and no. Yes, it's very true. But, strictly speaking, if the bytes exist in S3, pulling them down to a service running in Amazon, like you're going to be processing that at like hundreds of megs a second, versus the upload is likely much, much slower than that. So yes, there's definitely a physics issue in there, and it is just going to take time to pull down large objects, but it's
Well, I'm saying that
probably
the
yeah.
difference though is that when it's done on the fly, yeah, the upload could be faster in both cases, but then now there's like a time between um there's a time that we don't have accounted for in the client where like if that time is say on manifest push and it has to wait, like it cannot verify that manifest until those blobs, then normally something that's a really fast operation could become really slow. Or I think what Sai saying like maybe we need like a separate call to say, hey, when is this available from the client? But that's kind of like a whole new flow.
I mean, don't we already have that with the chunked uploads anyway? Um, because I mean, yeah, again, this might be an implementation specific thing, but if you're pushing up a chunk via a whole bunch of patch requests, you can't actually calculate the hash until the end, until you actually have all of them, at which point you're sort of copying them and
I,
re-uploading them anyway.
I do them on the fly as the chunks come in. I just keep the state
Yeah, we don't support out of
on the
order
registry.
chunking right now on
Yeah.
Mhm.
if we were to
That's
support that,
another.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Derek.
No, you go on because that was another topic that we were talking about.
No, you're hitting the point. Like there was a point where we're discussing out of order uploading as well. Um, it's all because of the state we maintain. I'd opened an issue request back in the day, which tried to solve this, but we never came to a conclusion. But I see what Jeff's trying to solve, which is like people are uploading, even like we get a lot of traffic right now, uploading huge blobs, like 100 gigs plus blobs, and the upload takes like an hour on a single connection, whereas on S3 it takes like 20 minutes. So I understand the pain point, but there's no good solution right now.
Is there a way in S3 to ask it to, or let me put it another way. Does S3 support any other like Merkle tree hashes or something that it can get right away that we could leverage there?
If in the docs they don't say anything. I think
Okay.
it's their internal architecture. But they, for every object that's uploaded, especially using like, for example, if it's a large blob, they only support multi-part. Like if it's more than 5 gigs, you cannot upload like a straight blob. You have to do multi-part upload on S3 more than 5 gigs. So for multi-part uploads, and each chunk they upload has its own checksum. So they somehow maintain that. Um, Other than that, they don't give any more information.
So what you're saying is with S3 anyways, we couldn't ask it to get a straight shot of more than 5 gigs.
There is an API, like there's an API that does it, but it takes a long time.
Okay, gotcha.
How long is a long time? Like, is that comparable to the time we save in uploading? It seems like it would save a lot more
Uh,
time, right?
I don't know, possibly. It depends on the size of the upload. Um,
I think overall the time would still probably be less to like upload directly to S3 and then have it compute on the back end as Jeff was saying, like that's fast.
yeah,
The problem
yeah.
is like that delay between okay, upload's completed and like what's the client expecting during that time? Because
Hmm.
even if it takes 20 minutes to upload, but it only takes 1 minute to calculate the hash, it's like that's beyond what's kind of like what is the client understand to be going on during that time? And like what time is it absorbing that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would bet it's going to be faster uploading and then asking S3 for checksums. But so we have two options, right? Like the final commit where the client sends blob uploaded now. Um, that final commit request either needs to be blocked on the registry, which I don't like. Like I don't like holding connections for nothing. Or we need to implement like an async workflow where the client keeps polling, hey, is it done? Is it done? Or something like that.
So to try to understand the proposed flow for that, I contact the registry to say I want to upload something. The registry returns a location path, which is an S3 upload signed, pre-signed URL, does the post or whatever, sends all the data up. And then after that, the client's going to go back to the original registry and say, here, finalize the blob upload.
Right. And then the registry will go back to S3 and says, hey, this is the location of the upload. Give me the checksum. And then it matches that checksum with whatever the client says the checksum is. And if both match, then the registry will say, yep, it's good. And that's when the whole blob is committed.
Would it be possible to, instead of having the registry tell you where to upload your blob, you tell the registry where you uploaded your blob so that you could have already done it ahead of time?
You could run into like override issues. Like you could easily overwrite other data.
Well, you just say, I want to upload this blob here into the registry. This is my blob. And then it could already be uploaded. You could already have the SHA calculated. You could already upload like 10 blobs ahead of time for all your layers.
Yeah, but how do you trust the client?
Now we're getting back into the foreign layer URL discussion from the beginning. We just circled right back around.
What do you mean you can't trust it? You think they're lying about the SHA, or is?
Yeah.
You wouldn't lie about a Shaw. Brandon's face tells me he would lie about a Shaw. I've lied about a Shaw.
I'm thinking both me and Tianan would both lie about the Shaw.
The old Windows layers that was created for used to point to the Microsoft URL shortener. And so it wasn't even necessarily under the purview of the team that added those URLs to those JSON documents for whether or not they were lying about the SHA.
So I guess, like, why do we trust the SHA more in a situation where we give them the URL than where they give us the URL, assuming like we have some way of verifying it? So like on my end, for a GCP registry, we'd probably give a GCS like location either way, and it seems like it'd be equally valid to verify. I'm assuming Amazon would do it like an S3 location either way. I don't know why one is easier to verify than the other.
How does the registry verify that it's immutable, I guess? I mean, certainly the registry could compute the hash itself and trust its own computed hash, but its immutability, that's a problem, I think.
Okay, so they added it as it's uploading.
Yeah, I mean, a hash over a mutable object doesn't mean anything.
But doesn't it run into the same problem either way? Like, I don't understand why one has a problem, one doesn't. Like, either way, the user could just like dump random crap into the object like after they got a hash, right?
So I'll tell you for the way we do it. So we don't get, so the location we give to the end user is not the final location of the blob. It doesn't have the checksum. It's some random location. Once the user uploads that blob to that location through us, basically calculating the checksum. So once we validate the checksum is valid, we move it to the correct location. And after that, it's only read-only. So it's immutable after that.
That's how I would assume you're doing. So then in that case, isn't it easier to just ask the user where they've uploaded it if you're going to move it anyway? Like, why do you need them to upload it to this location?
They'll break the immutability, right? Like you can have two users upload two different data to like same checksum in your case, because if you're letting the client dictate what location to upload.
I'm not really following, but
so you're saying let the client say decide where the upload is going to be, right? So let's say the client one does upload at like /SHA1, right? And the upload is done and whatever, it's finished. And let's say another client two comes in and then tries to upload at the same location with different data. So it's basically breaking the immutability, right?
I think you'd have to trust that the clients aren't going to be like dumb. Like it's
not dumb. It's in like the problem is the clients are not dumb. The problem is the clients are nefarious. That's like we're not protecting against dumb. We're
But this doesn't
protecting
protect
against
against any like having two clients could still push the same URL either way. Like this doesn't protect against anything having it come from the registry. Because like you can take that
I think that
URL and different clients.
that case that you're talking about would be solved by what was discussed around like basically if it's just a URL, like you don't even really need a registry at that point. If the registry is not verifying hashes, you could almost just dump whatever content you
I'm
want
not saying that
into.
or sure. So it sounds like the I don't see any of these problems are actually solved by the registry like pre-assigning a URL to upload, especially if you're going to copy it. Like I as a user can say, I already have this blob uploaded. Please take this blob. I mean, there's some level of like lack of trust there, but there's also a lack of trust if the registry gives me a URL. I could also do the same bad things in that URL that the registry gave me to upload to.
Yeah, but
The
it's
registry
always
is
going
not
to be
going
a
to use
different
that
URL.
hash though.
Yeah.
The registry is going to verify the hash and it might share that content across multiple repositories. Whereas the case you're talking about is like every repository is kind of living in its own user-owned space. That's what I was saying. Like if that's the case already, like you don't really even need a registry. You can just upload the structure into your wherever you're storing the stuff, and then that gets more into like the static
So
registry thing that we're talking about because the registry is not doing much there.
I'm probably being unclear because like the thing that you're describing that I'm talking about is like doesn't seem to relate at all to what I'm talking about. But I think I'm probably delaying this too much, so I guess we can move on.
No,
I'm
that was the
wondering
last topic, right?
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I'm wondering, do I understand the concern correctly that you're worried that a client could continue to send data to that pre-signed S3 URL after the put request goes to the registry and it verifies the digest?
Wait, is that my concern?
I'm asking if that was the concern being raised. Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering what we get by constraining the client. They have to register, send it to this one URL, and just say, "I already did it to this URL." Pretend that was the URL you sent me, and then it would just be the exact same. It seems faster.
Yeah, but I mean, if the client is saying, "Here's the place I uploaded it to," the registry would still have to get it into the registry's blob store somehow, which I think that means that wouldn't solve Jeff's concern.
I mean, that is a good point, Brendan, though, that the registry would have to cut that off and make that object immutable before it actually
verifies.
pulls it into its hash map or whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like we'd be doing a copy anyway, either way, if you don't trust it. I know at least for GCS, copying within the same bucket is very fast. I mean, copying within the same region.
All right. Well, we went from just about no agenda to Jeff asking a bunch of really good questions and filling out a full hour here. So, Jeff, feel free to waste another Friday on me. And
I've got more stuff.
okay.
This is good. This is good. I
I'll-
like this. This is a good discussion.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will be back here next week and hopefully have another good discussion. I assume that 2 weeks we are going to be off since that's going to be Christmas Day. So, see everybody here next week for folks that are here. If you're not here, have a good holiday.
Later.
Cheers all.
Cheers all.